Hey, welcome to this quick lesson on 10 chords that you need to know as a guitarist. Hey, I'm Steve Krenz, a professional guitarist here in Nashville, Tennessee. And if you get a chance, download the PDF that goes along with this lesson. It is in the YouTube description down below this video, and that will get you started on all the forms that we're going to talk about. Now, some of these are forms that you have probably, if you've played basic chords and maybe a little bit beyond, you may have run across a few of these. But for a lot of players, we just kind of learn the basic chords and then we just stop. We just kind of, once we can play C, A minor, an F, maybe we can squeeze out an F, and we think that, oh, well, that's really all the chords that I need to know. Well, there's actually more chords, a lot more chords than you could do. And of course, there's gazillions of them if you want to get into it. But here are some, from my perspective as a professional player, that are the most helpful. So let me get my acoustic here, and we're going to talk about a few of those as we get going. The first one we're going to talk about is a G5. Now, sometimes you'll see this referred to as a G power chord. Now, this is an open version of it here. So I'm just going to play this version. I use my second finger up at the top. I don't play the fifth string. It's actually muted out with my second finger here. Then I have a D and a G and a D and a G. A G5, a power chord, has no third in it. It's just roots and fifths. Root, fifth, root, fifth. So in the key of G, it'd be a G, a D, and then another G, another D, another G. So just a bunch of roots and fifths. Because it doesn't have this third, it is neither major or minor. So this particular chord works great for kind of more up-tempo, more aggressive songs, and you want kind of a good open power chord sound. If I'm on an acoustic and I want, it's kind of an up song, and I want something, instead of just playing a G, traditional G, which has lots of thirds in it. So it's a very sweet, very open sounding chord. If I want to sound a little bit more aggressive with it, I take out those thirds and I end up with this G5. So I end up with a chord that's a little bit stronger. So if I played something a little bit more aggressive, oh yeah, that's a great chord when I want to sound aggressive on acoustic. And you could do it on electric as well. But if I want to play a G that's not so sweet sounding as this, then I will do that. So if you look on your music, I've got the chord form written out there with the fingers that are traditionally used for it. And then next to it, I have how to use this chord. For this one, you can substitute this for any G major chord. So if you have a progression like all I have to do is dream. G to an E minor. So if I have something like that, and I want to sound a little bit more aggressive with it, there you go. It's a good way to sound a little bit more punchy on a G chord. That's chord number one. So you can substitute that for any G. Works well for either G major or minor, but particularly better for G major. Okay. Hey, look at the next one. Let's switch over to electric on this one. And we're going to do, this is a power chord form. Now I have it written in G, but there's no open strings on it, so I can move that anywhere. You'll notice there's a diamond over that sixth string lowest note. And what do we have? We have a root, third and fifth. Again, roots, thirds, roots, fifths, and roots. So no third in this one. Okay, so there we go. This is a good substitution if I'm playing more kind of rock and roll stuff. Let me get some distortion. And I want to sound a little more punchy with that. There you go. On my jazz guitar, it's hard to get a rock sound out of a jazz guitar, but there you go. That'll do it. Let me try a different distortion. Works really good if you want to mute it down. Do a little palm muting over here. So if I have our same G, E minor, C, and D progression, all I have to do is dream progression, 1, 6 minor, 4, 5 in the key of G, and I wanted to sound more rocky on it, I could maybe do this, maybe do my little palm muting, maybe do some all down strokes on eighth notes. Okay? One of the things that works well with this is that punchy eighth note with the mutes and aggressive sort of rock sound in that, even though I don't have my rock guitar here with me. That's a great chord to use that. Now, it's got a diamond on it, which means there's no open strings. It's movable. So even though it's not a bar chord, I can still move that around. So don't think that you can only use it in G. You can work for any key. Let's say I wanted to do a C. I just have to move that to the 6th string C. Even easier than that, the first finger is the root. If I put the first finger on the 5th string, C, it's the same chord, same fingering. So it works on the 6th string root or a 5th string root. Very versatile chord. If you're not using this chord on a normal basis, you're missing a lot of fun guitar work. It's just a simple power chord. So if you're just still using a traditional G for this, you could be using this to get a little more of a rocky sound. Okay, so that's another one. What else do we have? We've got power chords that are low. Everybody knows the low power chords. But most folks, they don't seem to equate that you can flip the inversion around and you end up with a higher voiced one. So what if I have I put my G here and then I put a D here. What if I put another D underneath it? I'm left with a D, G, D, 5th root, 5th. This is at the 7th fret. And I've got my 2nd finger on the 2nd fret, or 2nd string, 8th fret G. First finger on the D, and then pinky on the D. And I'm playing just the last 3 strings. Throw a little bit of distortion on that. A great, very versatile chord. If I'm in G and I want to just have a part that's a little bit more I can do a lot of moving around for that. So if I just get this going, crank up my volume, my effect volume quite a bit. There you go. That's one way to get some different power chord things happening. Now, that works great for rock, works great for pop stuff as well. So if I don't want to play this low power chord, which is what everybody does, if I don't want to do something different, I can play the higher power chord. And just start moving those notes around there. It's another fun option that you have. Let me turn this down. Get that back. Okay, so that's number 3. Take a look at the 4th one. All right, here we have an E2. In fact, let me go back on acoustic for these. Okay, so this one is, again, it's a movable chord. I start at my 2nd fret and I bar. Bar that 1st finger, and then I got my 3rd finger and my pinky and my 1st finger coming down to catch the 2nd. So it's actually an E2. It's a 2 form. Now don't get knocked out with the E's and the G's and all these forms. If it's movable, you can put it in any key. And that is a really pretty chord. Again, it does not have a 3rd in it, so I could use it for major or minor, but it use it particularly good for major. It sounds particularly good for major. Since it has that F sharp, that 2nd at the top of the voicing, it sounds very pretty, very harmonically melodic in that sense. Okay, so this works great on pop songs, on country songs, finger style, that sort of stuff. Boy, that could be an intro to some country song right there. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. The song is in F. Oh, okay, no problem. It's movable. Put my first finger where that diamond is. It's a great little chord. I use it all the time in my playing. If I want to get that finger style, that pop or country sort of sound, that's one of my go-to, and it's a pretty, maybe it's a ballad or something like that, and I want something pretty, I'll throw that voicing in there. Hey, look at the next one. This is another E2. Everybody always plays this for an E. Nothing wrong with that E. That's a great E. Everybody does it. Nope, nothing wrong with it at all. If you want to add a little bit more color, a little bit more harmonic interest in it, a little bit more texture and richness, I could add that second, but instead of putting it at the top of the voicing, like we did on this one, I'm going to put that F sharp, the second in the key of E, I'm going to put it down in the chord. So you end up with a little bit, with it buried in there, and that buried F sharp ends up being a very pretty, rich sounding chord. It's a little bit of a reach to get your pinky out that far, but it's well worth trying to figure out how to do it for a couple of weeks to get your hand to stretch that far. It's a great chord that I use all the time if I'm doing anything in the key of E, because what am I left with? I can do a power chord, but if I want something sweet and pretty, well, I'm just left with the plain old E, which is what every other guitar player is going to do. If I can add that second, that suddenly gives me a uniqueness in the sound. There you go. All right, hey, take a look at the next one. Oh, you know I was going to get to this one. An E minor ninth. Oh, great chord. It's like the bottom half of a C chord that's scooted up 2 frets. And you have, I play the 6th string, I skip the 5th string. Then I have an F sharp here with my second finger. Open G, that's where the tension comes in. That F sharp and G right next to each other. You say, oh, Steve, that sounds gross. When I add it in context, it creates a very harmonically rich sounding chord. Hey, if you slide up with your second finger, if I'm in a recording session, there's an E minor and it's something that's supposed to sound pretty or mysterious on the guitar, you can bet I'm going to be playing this. It's just one of those real solid money chords on guitar. Speaking of money chords, all of these chords, most all of them, in fact I think all of them, are in a series that I did, a fretboard workout series I did called the money chords. These are the chords that sound really, really great on guitar. If you haven't gotten that series yet, I take you through 3 workouts. We have a live band with us the whole bit. We take you through 3 workouts to really learn these and 10 times these chords. And these are the real nuts and bolts, great sounding chords on guitar. If you are not familiar with that series, there's some links down below if you can check out the money chord series. This is one of the best ones. Now, this over any E minor chord, since it does have that minor third in it, I can throw this E minor ninth, and generally it's not going to throw anything off. If I add some other chords around it and maybe keep up that F sharp G thing, I end up with sounds like this. That's some rich sounding stuff there. All I'm doing, E minor ninth, and then we went to a C, and so I put a C at the bottom of it, which created this, a C flat 5 sort of a sound, but it's just adding a different note in it. What if I move that down to a B? play around with different bass notes and create some really unique sounds when they have those strings that are right close to each other. That's a good one. E minor ninth. I've made that chord has put food on my table. Okay. Hey, look at the next one. Keeping in the see, one of the questions there, John is saying, why is the high E not played? You can play the high E. It's in there. Now I'm playing it fingerstyle. Actually hybrid with, because I got my pick between this. So what if I wanted to play the whole, how do you mute out that inner string? Well, you could just put your third finger down here, kind of make a C shape, but that gets a little muddy down there. So generally I don't really strum with this unless I get around it by doing this. And I'm just strumming the top strings. Might be a way to get around that. All right, hey, A minor ninth, chord number 7. Oh man, here's another one where I've got the C and the B, the ninth in the key of A, and the C natural, the flatted third in the key of A, right next to each other, and that gets a really dense, harmonically rich sort of sounding chord. I use my second and third finger. You could use your 1 and 2, but generally second and third leaves my other fingers free to do some things. Anytime there's an A minor and I want to sound a little more hip, I'll lay this bad boy on them. Second and third finger up here at the 5th fret on the 3rd and 4th string. Hey, here's an idea. Just scoot it up a half step. You end up with a beautiful A major ninth. Sometimes you can take a single shape and start moving it around. These are called shape chords. That Money Chord series that I get into talks about those as well. But here's one of them. I can do an A minor ninth. If I move it up a half step, it's an A major ninth. What if I went back to an E minor ninth? Maybe I can just occasionally throw in another note. Now, if I just looked at that on the piece of music, it would be an E minor and an A minor. And I'm just substituting in these really cool sounding guitar chords. So moral of that story is, hey, learn a couple of new forms. Everybody thinks I know a million forms. That's not true. All you need to know is 10 more forms than the guy sitting next to you. And suddenly everybody will think you're a guitar chord genius. And it's all because you know a couple more forms than the guy sitting next to you. Here's a couple. Those are a couple of my favorites. Learn them, take them, learn them. All right, hey, look at the next one. This would be a chord number 8. Oh yeah, here's a good one. Now this one's movable. We've got a movable root, but oddly enough, it's on the 4th string and played with our pinky. How weird is that? So here's what the chord sounds like. This one's going to be harder to grab. If you want to think, here's a B minor 7th, but instead of my 3rd finger, I'm going to put my 4th finger out. This would be a G major 9th with a B in the bass. Oh my goodness, that sounds way too complicated. Now it doesn't have any open strings, so I could put this in any key. But think of it, it's a G chord, with a major 9th, some ornamentation on it, but it's got the 3rd, the B in the bass. So it's going to sound very melodic, pretty. It's going to sound real pretty. So if I'm in the key of G, that B in the bass it gives a little lift to the sound. Can you hear the lift? Here's a G2. G with the B in the... Great sounding chord. Then let's say I maybe wanted to go to a C. C2 there. See how well that B in the bass leads me up to that C2? So I have a chord progression suddenly that sounds like this. Hey, maybe I can do my A minor 9. Beautiful sounding chord. Where would you use that? Well, if you want something to sound maybe finger style, it's starting. It's with the major ninth and the major seventh in there. It's starting to sound a little jazzier. If I wanted to do it in a C, maybe I'm going to a C chord. Well, I have to think it's third, C, D, E, and then play the chord here. So the lowest note is the third of the chord. The pinky is the root, and this would be the third. So you just go to the third of whatever chord you're trying to go to and make that shape, and you have this really pretty sound. Now you got to think. Let me get it back down here. It also will work with the relative minor of G, which would be an E minor. So I have this chord, this G major ninth with a B in the bass. With it, as soon as I put an E in the bass, it turns into this beautiful E minor 11th sort of a sound. It's a very cool chord that you can move around. Oh my goodness, we're going to do it in an A. Sure, no problem. Melodic chord, a little bit of a stretch, and if you're, but your pinky will get used to that. So it can be, if you're playing a G, this will function over any sort of G major, seventh sort of sounding chord. It's going to sound pretty, so you probably don't want to play it in bluegrass or something like that because it's a little bit more harmonically rich, so that'd be better for more of a jazz setting. But there you go. So anything G major seventh, you can throw that chord in there. Just go to the third. That's how I learn it. You go to the third of whatever chord you're trying to get to and then build a chord. There you go. Hey, take a look at the ninth one. This is a simple one, a D sus. Y'all might already know this chord, but this is one of the most important chords that you're ever going to have to play on guitar because just so many things involve this chord. So if you're not really familiar with this chord, I would encourage you to get it underneath your fingers. I have my open string D, first finger on the A, then I have my third finger on the D, and my pinky on the G. Steve, can't you just do 2 and 3 there? Wouldn't that make more sense? No, don't do that. Because this suspended needs to resolve, almost all the time it's going to resolve or somehow be paired up with the D. So there's a D with my second finger, so if I just add my pinky. So D suspended is kind of like almost a variation of the D. So if I need to hang out on a D for a long time, I'm just hanging out on a D. But it still sounds interesting because I'm just adding that D sus in there. So it's good for if I'm just hanging out on a D chord, I can add that D suspended. Another thing I can do with it is pull off maybe the G to the D or to the F sharp on the first string. So I can hammer on to the G, pull off to the F sharp. Hey, what if I pull off the second finger, F sharp, to the open E beneath it? You see what I'm doing? I'm just kind of playing around with one string, that first string. But Steve, what good is that? Like Marty McFly, you're just not thinking fourth dimensionally. No, you got to think about all the things you can do with this. Whoa, what was all of that? Learn this. Learn this, my little guitar friends. How to flip around on a D and a D suspended. Just because you're going to do that a lot. It's one of the most, if not the most common chord you're going to see in real music on guitar. So it's adding that D sus to that D gives you a whole bunch of things that you can play with. And so you just play around with hammering on, hammering them off. What if I pulled off my first finger? Whoa, what was all that? I'm flipping off. Did you put a little speed on that? There you go. All right. The last one I want to show you is a D with an F sharp in the bass. A D with the F sharp in the bass. Again, like the G major with the B in the bass, having the third in the bass is going to make it sound sweeter. It's going to give it a lift. It's going to give it some sense of pulling, of direction. Listen, here's a D. If I add the F sharp in the bass, that's a great sounding chord. It sounds like it wants to go somewhere. Maybe to the G. You hear how it's so easily, if I need to go to a G, which a D and a G are always going between each other, the root, the 1 and the 4 chord in any key. That D with an F sharp in the bass gives a little motion, a little bass line motion to that. So instead of just going D, G, if I add a D with the F sharp in between there, suddenly it sounds like my progression is moving somewhere, that there's a flow that I'm going to. It's one of the best chords on guitar. Not hard at all. Second finger on this 6th string, 2nd fret. I mute out the 5th string with my 2nd finger. I'm left with an open D. 3rd finger on the A there on the 3rd string, 2nd fret. Pinky there. Now, I'm not playing the high note, the high string. You notice that's got an X over it. So I'm just going down there. If I wanted to strum it, how can I do that without strumming? This pinky is lightly touching that 1st string. So I've got fingers on the 5th string and muting out the 1st string. There you go. Those are 10 great chord forms that every guitarist needs to know. Take your guitar playing to another level. Those ones that are movable, I would encourage you to play around with getting them into different keys and messing around with progressions and putting those in different keys. So don't think that this one is only good for the key of G. It can be moved in any key. Same thing with this. That E2, I can put that in G if I wanted to. Same thing with this high. These power chords as well. So probably well over half of those are chords that can be moved around. So there you go. Hey, if you like the content that we're providing to you and the resources that we're providing to you, I hope so. Click the like button there, and also, if you can, subscribe. That way you'll know when we go live. We go live usually on Tuesday nights, and go from there. Hey, I'm Steve Krenz for Guitar Gathering. Learn all you can. We'll catch you later.